Good evening. Okay, some of you are normally in the room. Just me and David. This is great. I'm going to mute all of you. Tonight we're learning Maseches Pesachim, Daf Ayin Beis, and only Daf Ayin Beis, just to the top of Ayin Gimel and Aleph. I was in bed for a chunk of the day today. I think vaccine number 2 has continuing to take its toll on me. So we're going to start at the Mishnah on the bottom of Ayin Aleph Amud Beis. And this new Mishnah speaks about things that we've spoken about in the past, but with a different spin. And that is, what if one's kavanos change as they are bringing the korban? So let's go straight into the Mishnah 2/3 of the way down. Ayin Aleph Amud Beis. HaPesach sheshachto shelo lishmo b'Shabbos. If a person has an intersection between Yud Daled of Nisan, where we're obligated to bring a korban Pesach, and Shabbos itself. So we've already learned the Gzeira Shava that it's appropriate still to bring a korban Pesach. However, if it's Shabbos and you're bringing a korban Pesach, but shachto shelo lishmo, you decide that this korban is not a korban Pesach, it's a neder, a nedava, whatever it is. It's something other than what it should be. So the halacha is chayv alav chatas. It's the same action. You take a knife, you do the shechita, it's the same action, but the halacha is that you're chayv chatas. So obviously this was done b'shogeg. It wasn't done intentionally. A korban chatas is never given as an out when there's a mazid, when you've done a violation intentionally, only when it is done b'shogeg. So here this shelo lishmo, he thought it should have been different, or whatever was going on in his head. We'll detail that a little bit more later, but that halacha would be that you're chayv chatas. Ushar kol hazvachim, any other korban that a person were to bring on this day of Shabbos, sheshachtan l'shem Pesach. Let's say you take a zevach, an animal that isn't, it wasn't the one that was set aside for the korban Pesach, and you shechted it l'shem Pesach. So here we have a discussion. If the animal that you are now posing as your korban Pesach, if it's really not ra'ui, let's say, for example, it's a huge cow. Cows are not ra'ui for that. So if it's a huge cow, so the halacha is chayiv. The halacha is that one is going to be chayiv for that bringing that korban. It's a non-korban Pesach animal, and you brought it as though it's a korban Pesach on Shabbos, on Yud Daled, which is Shabbos. You're chayiv for having violated Shabbos. You're chayiv chatas. So the Mishnah continues, Ayin Aleph Amud Beis, 4 lines into the Mishnah. Ve'im re'uyin. However, if you're bringing a random korban and the animal is a ra'ui korban, really it's the right sheep, it's the right kind of animal. So there we have a big machlokes tanoim, and this machlokes is going to carry us through most of the day today. Rabbi Eliezer mechayev chatas, Rabbi Yeshua poter. Rabbi Eliezer says that if the animal appears that it could have been a Pesachim, a korban Pesach, so the halacha is you're still going to be chayav chatas. Rabbi Yeshua is poter. What is their machlokes about? So their machlokes is about a principle called ta'ah b'mitzvah. If a person makes a mistake, it's an iser d'oraisa error, but it was in line with a mitzvah. I'm trying to bring a korban Pesach. I made a mistake. I had the wrong animal. Ra'ui, not ra'ui. So if it's ra'ui, Rabbi Yoshua would still say ta'ah b'mitzvah is pater. My intention was to do good things, and even though the action that I did in a vacuum, no question about it, would be an Isser D'Oraisa. But here, because you were striving to fulfill, there's some shemetz. You didn't fulfill the mitzvah. Obviously, you didn't fulfill the mitzvah, but because your intentions were what they were, so therefore says Rabbi Yoshua, you're going to be pater. Now, Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua are going to dialogue about this in the Mishnah. We get to see a little bit of their banter, their back and forth about this principle of ta'ah b'mitzvah, pater or chayev. If a person makes a mistake with the mitzvah, what would we say? So then it says the Mishnah as follows. We're about 3-4 lines before the lines get wide in the Gemara. Ayin Aleph Amud Beis. Amar le Rabbi Eliezer. Hold on 1 second. Rabbi Eliezer says to Rabbi Yoshua, how can you be so lenient? How can you say that ta'ah b'mitzvah is going to be pater? Ma'ima pesach shu muter lishmo ksheshina shemo chayev. The korban pesach, which we know that we're allowed to bring on Yud Daled, which falls out on Shabbos. There, if you bring it with the right intentions, you're good. You bring it with the wrong intentions, you're chayav chatas. Then zvachim, a random animal, out of the blue, you pull one out of the barn. Shehein asurin lishman, even if you would have brought it for its own sake, a neder, a nadava, a rat, whatever it is, that's not allowed on Shabbos. Then all the more so, kishashinu es sheman, even though you're going to be thinking about Pesach, eno din shehei chayev, of course you're going to be chayev in such a case. So Rabbi Eliezer doesn't like the sheet of Rabbi Yoshua. Amar le, first long line, Amar le Rabbi Yoshua, no, Rabbi Eliezer, you misunderstood. Imamris bePesach, if we say by a korban pesach sheshinhu b'davar aser, you changed your mindset Tomar bizvachem sheshina medavar amuter. But with this random korban, where we said that maybe you might be pater, when Rabbi Yeshua holds that you're pater, but there your kavanas were good. But by the korban pesach, your kavanas were bad. So you're going to be chayiv in one, but pater in the other. You're going to be chayiv by the korban pesach, afal pi that it's idealistically brought on Shabbos. But your kavanas were bad, so therefore you're going to be held accountable. And when you have a random zebach, a non-korban pesach animal, but your intent is for Pesach, so there Rabbi Yeshua says you're going to be pater, tab, a mitzvah pater. Amar le Rabbi Eliezer, sorry, I still don't agree with you. Why not? Emurei tzibur yochichu. There are korbanos of the tzibur that will prove against your point. What are emurei tzibur? The Meforshim explain that we're talking about korbanos tmidin umusafin on Shabbos. So we know that on Shabbos, of course, every day of the year, we bring a korban tamid shel shachar and a korban tamid shel ben harbayim, which is the bedrock for many halachos that we've seen here. As mentioned, the korban pesach, which comes first, the korban pesach, or is it the tamid? One says ben harbayim, then both of them say mibo erev. So all the discussions we saw many blot ago. But here, Rabbi Eliezer is arguing from that vantage point. In regards to the korbanos, the emurei tzibur, the tmidin, and the musafin, which we know are allowed to be brought on Shabbos, shein mutar and lishman. These animals can be brought when they're brought properly. The tamid can be brought if the intent is to bring a tamid. Ve'ashochet lishman. You take a random animal and then you say this is a tamid, even if it's not a tamid. So the halacha is that you're chayiv. So Rabbi Eliezer says that should be the equivalence to our case, where Rabbi Yoshua says pater. Why don't we make the same exact equivalence? Amar le Rabbi Yeshua, lo, that's not a good comparison either. We cannot learn from emurei tzibur, because im amris be'emurei tzibur sheyesh lahen kitzva. In regards to the emurei tzibur, the tmidin and the mutzafin, we know exactly what number those are. So fine, that's one area. There, I'll agree with you that you're going to be chayiv. If you take a random animal and you make it into a korban tamid, you're right. I'm going to agree that if you do that on Shabbos, you're chayiv. Tomar b'Pesach, but in contrast, by Pesach, she'ein lo kitzva. It's not two korbanos of Pesach. We saw the Gemara where Agrippa asked the Kohen Gadol, can you please tell me how many Jews there are? So he took a census with kidneys, or maybe, says the Gemara, with every kidney they flipped out a coin because there were some logistical challenges of burning it, because it had to all be burned with the animal with which it came. What are you going to do? You're going to label every animal, not so pashut. So maybe when Agrippa was talking to the Kohen Gadol, it was just tokens, whatever it was. But says Rabbi Yeshua, Rabbi Eliezer, you can't argue that way, because our case you're arguing from the Tmidin and the Musaf, and there's a fixed number of those korbanos. Mashe ein kain, in the world of Pesach, ein lo kitzva. So then says the Gemara, a new shita that we haven't seen yet. Rabbi Meir, he's the most lenient of them all. 5 lines from the bottom. Rabbi Meir Omer, af hashochet l'shem emurei tzibur pater. Whereas even Rabbi Yehoshua would have agreed that if a person takes a random animal and dedicates it as a korban tamid, but it's not a korban tamid, if he were to have done that, he would still say that you're pater. That's in contrast. Rabbi Meir would say pater, while even Rabbi Yeshua would say chayiv. Good. Now the last 4 lines are things that we've learned before. Most of it we've seen before, not quite all of it. Shachto, if the shchita was done shelo la'ochlav. If you did shchita for people who cannot eat, we defined this earlier in the Maseches, just a couple blot ago, as a zaken or a cholesh, shelo la'ochlav, or shelo lemnuya, for people who are not part of the chabura, la'arel, and people who are uncircumcised, v'latmei, and people who are tamei, they're not eligible to eat. In all of those cases, if you do that shchita of that animal on Shabbos, you're going to be chayiv. Now, during the week, you could have done it, I guess. You wouldn't have been chayiv, but you also wouldn't have fulfilled the mitzvah saseh of korban pesach. But on Shabbos, pashat, you're going to be chayiv, because you just did a shchita for absolutely no purpose at all. That's not allowed. However, la'ochlav v'shelo la'ochlav, if the kavana was for those who can eat it and those who can't, limnuya v'shelo limnuya, those who are part of the chabur and those who are not, lamulim v'la'arelim, those who are circumcised and those who are not, latmein v'latahor, and those who are tamei and those who are tahor. So that it's just interesting. I just noticed in all the cases, all the positive ones were first and the negative ones were second. And the last one, it's tamei first and tahor last. I don't know. It's Balabatish question. I don't know if it's a real question or not. Anyways, the Mishnah concludes, shachto v'nimsa balmum chayev. Let's say that a person does the shchita, and after the shchita is over, he sees that the animal is a balmum. He's missing an ear. He's missing an eye, something that's blaring, because all of the mumin that we look for are relatively simple to find. So the halacha is that you're chayiv. We'll see later in the Gemara today. That's because you were irresponsible. Because checking for balei mum, this is what we have by slichos for the Yamim Noraim, for Rosh Chodesh Elul. We don't mess around. Minimum 4 days. Otherwise, you get 11 days. Why? Why the 4 days? So the Meforshim there say, I believe it's quoted in the Mishnah Berurah, because we want to do a bikoras, we want to be checked like animals to make sure that we're not bale mumin as we walk into the high holidays, into the months of Elul and into the Yamim Norai. Anyways, let's continue. Shachto v'nimtza treifa b'seiser pater. If a person does a shchita and then they later find a treifa b'seiser, that is pater. What's a treifa b'seiser? So some of the treifas, they're obvious and we check for them. There's a whole slew of them. I believe there are 18 treifos that we check for. But there are some, like the ones that have a hole in the skull where there shouldn't be a hole in the skull, and other such treifas, the lungs, we can't pre-check those. You cut the animal open, the animal's that's a problem itself. So if it's a nimsa treifa b'seiser, so then you're pater. Let's say it's Shabbos, you did the shchita, and as you're cutting the animal open, you find that it's taka treifa, but you didn't know because it's treifa b'seiser. It was an internal problem that you couldn't have possibly seen. Then you're pater. Shachto, let's say you did the shchita, and then right after it's done, v'noda shemashcha abalim, the people who said no, I don't really want to take part in this korban pesach. Or they died, or they became tamei. To be clear, this whole Mishnah is the same Maisa, it's the same action, but the pivot between a din deoraisa and a din derabanan, and Isser deoraisa and Isser derabanan has nothing to do with the Maisa. It's all about the machshava, which is a very powerful idea. We have this idea by Shabbos, Maleches machshavas amar rachmana, but a lot of this is not a question of Maisa. Almost all of this is identical activities. The only question is, where was your brain? And one of the best contrasts is a mum versus a treifa. By a mum, you're lazy. You didn't do your job. You're chayiv if you do that korban. You should have looked better. But the treifa, you couldn't have looked better. Same action, same maisa, but you will not be held accountable. So now the Gemara on the top of Ayin Beis Amud Aleph is going to start digging into this Mishnah. It's going to start with the first part of the Mishnah. What was the first part of the Mishnah? A person who shechs a korban pesach, but he does so shelo lishmo. He changes his mindset. So asks the Gemara, what is the shelo lishmo? Let's figure out what he was thinking. Says the Gemara as follows, but my askinan, what's the case we were dealing with? Ilema bitoe, he made a mistake. He's bringing the korban pesach and he's like, I want this to be my korban chagiga. I want this to be a neder or a nedava. It's a toes. Well, if that's true, and you'd still be chayav achatas, like it says in our Mishnah, shamas mina, that would imply akira betos havya akira, that your accidental mind change is actually valuable. But we don't paskin that way. The Gemara doesn't finish the sentence. But really, we don't paskin that way because there's another shita out there. I believe it's in the name of Rabbah. And we paskin like that, not like this. Rabbah holds akira betos lo havya akira. So the mindset of whether or not you accidentally change your mindset, that's a machlokes in the Amoraim as to whether or not that's considered a real mind change. So if that's true, says the Gemara, if that's true, then says the Gemara, akira betos havya akira, that can't be. So therefore, it can't be that our Mishnah was betos. Ella, says the Gemara, it's beoker. It must be where he intentionally changed his mindset. But if he intentionally changed his mindset, so that causes for another problem. How can you be chayav achatas if it was intentional? Our Mishnah says you're chayav achatas, right? That's what we're talking about. That's what our Mishnah reads. Our Mishnah reads like this: but we just said it's be'oker. You did it intentionally. So the Meforshim explain, no, yes, it was intentional, but it was intentional to shift to something that you thought was the case. Maybe you thought this was the korban chagiga. I don't know. There's 100 possibilities, but it wasn't in that way. It was meant to be specifically. It was meant to be specifically to teach us that yes, you were okay, you changed your machshava. However, you did so thinking that it was the right thing to do. So therefore, the Gemara assumes that our Mishnah is talking about be'akira, is talking about where you did so intentionally. So here's the problem with that. The Gemara says, Ayin Beis Amud Aleph 3 lines down, Ima Seifa, the problem is the rest of our Mishnah. What does the rest of our Mishnah say? The rest of our Mishnah says, Ushar kol hazvachim sheshachtan l'shuma pesach. If you have a random animal that you try to dedicate as a korban pesach, this we saw in our Mishnah, this is a quote, Im einan ru'uyan chayiv, you take a big, huge cow, then of course you're going to be chayiv. No one's going to make that error. Im ru'uyan hein, if it's the right size animal, then that's where we have our machlokas, Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yoshua. Rabbi Eliezer, mechayiv chatas, Rabbi Yoshua poter. And says the Gemara, the ibe oker, if that case in our Mishnah was talking about intentional mindset, so then Mali Ru'ya and Mali Einan Ru'ya, no matter what, we're going to say that you're going to be chayiv in that case because you were oker intentionally. That's for sure not going to work. Elapshita, it must be that the Seifa is talking about the Toa. The problem with that is as follows. If the Seifa is talking about the Toa and the Reisha is talking about Be'oker, the Seifa was an accident. The Reisha was with intent, albeit with idealistic intent. Says the Gemara, Reisha Be'oker, the Seifa betoa, that's a very big difference. That's a very big difference. The reisha is where you intentionally shifted your mindset, and the seifa is where you inadvertently. They're just not. It's not the same thing. As I say frequently, it's not a level playing field anymore. These things are not comparable. So it says the Gemara, Amar Avavin in. Yeah, no problem at all. It's okay that the reisha is talking about be'oker and the seifa is talking about betoeh. Says the Gemara in reisha be'oker v'seifa betoeh. A little story about this. Ashkechei Rabbi Yitzchak bar Yosef Rabbi Abo dabakai be'uchlasad inshi. Rabbi Yitzchak bar Yosef found Rabbi Abo amongst throngs of people. Amar lemas nisan mai. The Mishnah on the bottom of Ayin Aleph Amud Beis, give me pshat in the Mishnah, Rebbe. How do we understand it? Of course, it wasn't on Ayin Aleph for them. Our pagination is relatively recent historically, and these were Amoraim. There wasn't even a lot of what we see in our Gemara because the Savoraim who lived after the Amoraim placed in a lot of the Shak Levatari, so it certainly wasn't this pagination. Anyways, he said, what's pshat in our Mishnah? Omar Lei, Rabbi Abo says back to Rabbi Yitzchak bar Yosef, Reisha be'oker v'seifa betoah, just like we understood in the name of Rav Avin. The way that we understood it seems to be correct. It was quoted this way. Now let's see if it stands the test. It says the Gemara, Tanamine, he learned it from him, Arba'in Zimnin. He learned it from him 40 times. The dummy lay kiman demancha bekise. He learned it so many times, it's like it was in his pocket. So I was just thinking, this contrasts with the Gemara that says that when a person gets to Olam HaEmes, please God, after 120 healthy, happy, productive years, that it should be Talmud Biyado. Why does the Gemara say Talmud Bikiso? So it could just be a balabata shapshat. When something's in your hand, you're ready to use it. When it's biyado, I'm ready to use it. If it's bekis, I'm kind of ready. I got it on me, but I'm not totally. You're holding it in your hand, you're ready to go. So when we're heading to Olam HaEmes after 120, Talmud biyado, I'm ready to use this Torah. I'm ready to live my life this way. If it's bekiso, it's a little bit removed, but you're still holding on to it. I heard in a shiur I was listening to help prepare for Daf Yomi, somebody said, yeah, things fall out of your pocket all the time. You got to be careful. So Talmud Biyado does a little bit of a sharper tfisa. Nevertheless, he learned it 40 times and it was in his keys. Tanan, we have a Mishnah quoting our Mishnah, and we're going to ask a question from it. What does our Mishnah say? We already learned this. We'll read through it quickly. Amar Rabbi Eliezer, he's arguing against Rabbi Yoshua. Mein Pesach, shemuter lishmo, kshashina shmo chai. We said that if a korban Pesach is brought, and then you change your mindset, you're going to be chayiv. Zvacham, a random animal, sheina surin lishman, that it can't be brought for its own purpose. Kshashina sheman, when you change its mindset, when you change your mindset to bring this random animal to be a korban Pesach, all the more so it should be problematic. So says the Gemara, V'imisa, if what you're saying is true, Reb Avim, if what you're saying is that the reisha is be'oker and the seifa is betoeh, hello dummy, the reisha be'oker v'seifa betoeh. The argument itself, it's a kal v'chomer, ma x if y, therefore, but the two of them are talking about two different cases. You've merged the reisha and the seifa into one argument. So how can you do that? I could understand if you want to say the reisha is X and the seifa is Y. But if my whole argument to you is structured by weaving them together into one argument, reisha, seifa, it's too much. It's too much. So says the Gemara, Rabbi Eliezer lo shanile. According to Rabbi Eliezer, he doesn't think there's a difference between Oker and Toa. No problem at all. They're all the same. It is a level playing field, even though one was Oker and one was Toa. No problem at all. But the Rabbi Yoshua, the Shanile, according to Rabbi Yoshua, who does agree that there's a difference between Oker, between the mindset of intentional changing of the mind and inadvertent changing of the mind, if that's what he held, then Lishnei Lehachi, why didn't you spit that back to Rabbi Eliezer? If you hold that Oker and Toa are different, you should have said back to Rabbi Eliezer, that's a ridiculous argument. One's Oker, one's Toa. They're not the same. It's not a level playing field. So then says the Gemara, a brilliant answer. 1/3 of the way down, a little bit more high in Beis Amud Aleph, says the Gemara, Hachi Kamar Le. This is what Rabbi Yoshua was saying back to Rabbi Eliezer. One of the rules in debates, you got to argue in a way that the other person can hear. If you don't argue in a way the other person can hear, then it's going to be it's just two ships passing in the night. So Hachi Kamar Le. Lididi lo dami. Rabbi Yoshua says, in my camp, Toeh and what's the other one? Oker, they're totally different. Intentional mindset shift and an inadvertent mindset, they're totally different shifts. Reisha be'oker v'seifa betoah, they're totally different. But lididach, you, Rabbi Eliezer, I know you won't agree with me. Lididach lo, you don't agree with me. Therefore, I have to give you a different argument. How will I combat your argument? With what I actually said in our Mishnah. Beautiful. Imamris bepesach sheshina shemo l'davar aser, tomar bezvachim sheshina shemo l'davar hamuter. Come on. I agree. I can't use the argument of Oker and Toa with you because I know that you don't agree with that distinction. So instead, I'm going to give you a different argument. What's my response to you, says Rabbi Yoshua to Rabbi Eliezer, that if in regards to Pesach, where one is Shinu Es Shemo L'Davar Ha'aser, you changed your mindset to something that isn't a Korban Pesach, but by the Zevach, By the Tomar Bizvachim Sheshina Shimon the Davar Mutter, your mindset there is the Korban Pesach, so at least you should be pater. So that's how Rabbi Yeshua answered him. Beautiful. The Gemara here, another quote from our Mishnah. Amar Le, this is another quote from our Mishnah. He tried to bring an argument from the Tmidin and Musaf and Rabbi Eliezer, Emurit Tzibur Yochicho. We tried to bring a proof from the world of Tmidin and Musafin, Shehein Mutar and Lishman, that you're allowed to bring the Tmidin and Musafin on Shabbos, the Ashochet Lishman Chai. But if you take a random animal and you try to pretend like it's a Korban Tamid or if it's a Korban Musaf, there we would say you're Chayev. And then Amar Lo Yeshua Lo, he said, Amar Lo Rabbi Yeshua Lo, I don't agree with your argument. That's not a good argument. What did he say? Because Imamris Bemurit Tzibur Shekein Yeshlan Kitzvah, we know how many Korbanos Tamid there are every day. There's 2, and there's 1 Korban Musaf. That's why we say Shachris and we say Mincha to represent the Tmidin, and we say a Korban Musaf on that day. That's why the poskim write that since Shmona Esrei during the week, the regular Shmona Esrei is rooted in the Korban Tamid. So therefore, if on Shabbos during Shachris and Mincha and Mariv, if you inadvertently start with the bracha v'atachon and ladam das, you finish. But by Korban Musaf, it's not rooted in the same halachic ikr. It's not the tamid. So therefore, if you start a tachon and ladam das and Musaf on Shabbos, and this is lemaisa, you stop your bracha in the middle and you go back to Tikkun to Shabbos. Okay, so says the Gemara, the assumption of Rabbi Yeshua's answer was that it's all about kitzvah. That if we know how many korbanos there are, then we're going to be more makbid. But Tomar bepesach shein lo kitzvah. So the Gemara says, Lememra, is this to imply to kol hecha the islay kitzvah mechayev Rabbi Yeshua, that when we know how many korbanos are ahead of us, then we're going to say that Rabbi Yeshua be mechayev, just like we saw in our Mishnah? Is that what we're saying? I don't think that's going to play out so well. Let's see what the Gemara says, 2/3 of the way down. Let's talk about a case in Mishnah where there's 2 babies who need to have a bris. What's the case scenario if it's not? This is a Mishnah that we saw in Maseches Shabbos about 90 blot ago. Says the Gemara as follows. It's not Mishaylo shtei tinokos. 2 children were born. Amol has 2 brises to do. Echad lamulu achar Shabbos, ve'echad lamulu b'Shabbos. One is a Sunday bris and one is a Shabbos bris. But the Moel makes a mistake. V'shochachu males shel achar haShabbos b'Shabbos. So if you take the baby who is a Sunday bris, and you take the Sunday bris and you do that bris on Shabbos, the halacha is your chayev. That's a 0. That doesn't count at all. Why doesn't that count at all? Because the Sunday bris is early. This is day 7. So you're chayiv in that case. Echad lamulo be'erev Shabbos. Echad lamulo b'Shabbos. What if you have a baby? It's a Friday baby. It's a Friday bris and it's a Shabbos bris. V'shachachu males shel erev Shabbos b'Shabbos. And the bris that was supposed to be on Friday, you did on Shabbos. We're back to our case. Ta b'dvar mitzvah, because this baby really still has the mitzvah of Mila. It's just day 9, and you're not allowed to do it on Shabbos because it's not Docha Shabbos. A Mila shelo b'zman is not Docha Shabbos. There are a lot of exceptions to that. A Mila, if it's a C-section, a whole bunch of discussions. So the post can say, what if the delivery was an assisted delivery? They use forceps, they use vacuuming, a whole bunch of, all the post can, not all, many of the post can discuss these different shitas. In general, we assume that if it's a C-section baby, that it's not Docha Shabbos, and any other natural form of birth is considered acceptable. But here, this is a Friday baby being circumcised a day late on the following Shabbos. So it says the Gemara, V'shachach u'malas shel erev Shabbos b'Shabbos ta b'dvar mitzvah. You made a mistake with the mitzvah. Rabbi Eliezer mechayev chatas. Rabbi Yeshua poter. What do we see by Rabbi Yeshua? You're pater. Why are you pater? It's katzuv. That was the whole yesod. That was his whole argument in our Mishnah. Rabbi Eliezer wanted to say about, Tmidin and Musafin, we see the rules are over there. Rabbi Yeshua says, no. We can't learn from that. That's Katsu, because we know how many korbanos there are. Okay, well, what about Bris Milah? We know how many Bris Milos there are. There's only 2 kids. So why over there by Bris Milah did you say Pater? Excuse me. But in our Mishnah, you said Chayev. So Amar Rabbi Ami Hacha b'may askin, and what must have been the case? Says the Gemara 3/4 of the way down. Kigon shekadam umales shel erev Shabbos b'Shabbos. You did the bris of the baby who was really the Friday baby, and this is Shabbos morning, bright and early, and you did that bris on Shabbos. De'ika hach de Shabbos. You still have a baby left over to still do a circumcision on, and that baby, the other baby, was really the Shabbos bris. The first bris you did was an error. It should have been done the day before. Let's say you wake up in the morning and you realize, oh no, baby number 1 is bris should have been yesterday. Then you push it off to Sunday. Mila shelo b'zman is not docha Shabbos. So here, why is it that Rabbi Yoshua says pater when it comes to bris Mila, when it's a case of ta b'mitzvah? You made a mistake. You did the Shabbos, you did the Friday bris on Shabbos So he says the reason why is because you're still involved in the other bris. You're tarud. Your mind is all over the place. And because you're not so grounded in your mind, therefore you're pater. But hacha, here, in regards to our case in our Mishnah, the argument of Rabbi Eliezer to say that we're talking about Tmidin and Musafin that are katsu, what happened over there? The first thing you did was a Tmidin and a Musafin, and now you bring this random korban. Rabbi Yehoshua is going to say that you're chayiv. That's why in our Mishnah he says that you're chayiv, but by bris milah he says that you're pater. Says the Gemara, Hachi, if that's true, then we don't understand Rav Meir. If what you're saying is true, then let's try to understand. Rabbi Meir Omer, 10 lines from the bottom of the page. Af hashochet l'shem Emurei tzibur pater. He has the most lenient shita. This is a quote from our Mishnah. He says that if you take a random animal that isn't a tamid or a musafin, but in your brain you decide this is a korban tamid and a musafin, you bring the korban. Halacha is it's your pater. Afal gav de kadim v'shachtinhu le'emurei tzibur bereisha. This would be true even if you would have brought the actual korbanos first. V'atanya, how can that be? Rabbi Chia, Me'evel Arav, that's the name of a location. Amar Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Chia says as follows, in the name of Rabbi Meir. Lo nechlaku Rabbi Eliezer Rabbi Yoshua. Rabbi Meir is going to give a qualification on where the machlokes is between Rabbi Yoshua and Rabbi Eliezer. Where do they not argue? Lo nechlaku Rabbi Eliezer Rabbi Yoshua al shahayu lo shnei tinokos. There's no argument in the case of two babies. Echad lamul erev Shabbos, echad lamul b'Shabbos. The case is where you have a Friday baby and a Shabbos baby. V'shachach umala shel erev Shabbos b'Shabbos t'chayev. Everyone agrees. If you do that, unlike our previous Mari Makom, if you do the case that everyone agrees you're chayiv there. In the previous iteration, we saw that that's where Rabbi Yeshua was mekel because you were still tarud in another mitzvah. That's why he said you're mekel. But here he changes his mind. Alma nechlaku, last of the short lines, first of the longer lines, Ayin Beis Amud Aleph. Alma nechlaku, what are they actually arguing about? Al shahayu lo shnei tinokos, a different case. Not the Friday Shabbos baby, but echad lemul achar Shabbos, a Sunday baby. Ve'echad lemul bis Shabbos, and your Shabbos baby. And what you did is you did the bris, the mole did the bris of the Sunday baby on Shabbos. In that case, to Rabbi Eliezer Mechayev Chatas, Rabbi Yeshua Poter. So says the Gemara, this is a whole flipped way that we understood it before. We thought initially the way it was framed out for us is that the machlokes between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua was not when the Sunday bris was done on Shabbos, but when the Friday bris was done on Shabbos. Here it's reversed. Says the Gemara of Tizbara. You're asking a question against Rabbi Meir that his whole pshat doesn't make any sense. You don't make any sense. Mahasam tilo avid mitzvah patar Rabbi Yoshua. In one case, you haven't even done a mitzvah bichlal. When a Sunday bris is done on Shabbos, it's a zero. It's a zero. Do something else. Pierce another part. There's nothing. You haven't done anything. It's not a mitzvah. There he says it's going to be pater. Then when he actually does a mitzvah, the Friday bris on Shabbos, the mitzvah baba aveira, for sure it's usher, but it's still a mitzvah. You're going to say he's going to be chayiv in that. That's actually a mitzvah. Says the Gemara, how do we understand this case? Amrei debei Rav Yana, here's pshat. Reisha, what was the Reisha? Kigon shekadam umal shel Shabbos be'erev Shabbos. Really what happened was as follows. You did the Shabbos bris on Friday. Mal shel Shabbos be'erev Shabbos. Turning to the top of Ayin Beis Amud Beis, large Amud ahead of us. We will make it for Mariv. Shelo nitna Shabbos lidchos. When you have a case of doing a Shabbos bris on Friday, then the Friday baby is the one that's left over. That baby is lo nitna Shabbos lidchos. He's a Friday baby. It's a mila shelo bismana. Mila shelo bismana is not doches Shabbos. This seifa nasna Shabbos lidchos eslo. But in the other case where the bris was, where the bris would have been a trigger for Shabbos, if you did the Friday bris on Shabbos morning, then the Shabbos bris remains still the seifa nitna Shabbos lidchos eslo. That's still a mitzvah to do on Shabbos. But hacha in regards to the korbanos, harei nasna Shabbos lidchos etzel korban tzibur. Everyone agrees that when it comes to Shabbos, that you're allowed to do the korbanos tzibur. So says the Gemara, this distinction doesn't even make any sense. Why are you saying that Shabbos is only eligible for bris milah on day 8? Shabbos is a day in general that's eligible for bris milah. I felt either for this baby, it might not be. So says the Gemara, Amar le Rav Ashi Rav Kana, I don't understand. Hachanami, even in a case where the baby that is remaining is not really eligible for bris milah on Shabbos. It's the Sunday baby for Shabbos. He's not allowed to do that. But hare nasna Shabbos lidachos etzel tinokos to alma. In general, it's true. So why would we say that this is not a day? We should say pater because it's a day that in general bris milah is eligible. Says the Gemara, you're looking at it too globally. We need to look more granular. When we are trying to determine whether or not Rabbi Yeshua would hold pater or chayiv, we have to look through the lens of the granular. Is this baby shaykh by this Shabbos? Yes, of course. We know you can do a bris by Shabbos, but the fact that this baby is not eligible, therefore, Rabbi, it doesn't work out to say the way the Gemara is recommending. If the baby is not eligible for Shabbos, then we're going to have to say that the korban, that the bris in that case was chayiv. Says the Gemara in Beis 6 lines down. There we made a distinction in our mission. You take a random animal and you try to make it for the sake of a korban pesach. We said him in and ru'uyin, a big cow, pasha, that's going to be chayv ru'uyin. But if it's an animal that is the right size, so then Rabbi Eliezer mechayv chatas and Rabbi Yeshua poter. That's where we saw our machlokas in our Mishnah. So the Gemara wants to know this distinction of when an animal is ra'ui versus not ra'ui. Where did we get that from? Says the Gemara, Mantana Deshanile, Ben Ru'uyin L'Shein and Ru'uyin. Where do we see our distinction between an animal that's ra'ui and not? When an animal is not ra'ui, we say chayiv. When an animal is ra'ui, we say pater. Where does that even come from? Answers the Gemara, Reb Shimon. The Tanya, the Brisa presents the sheet of Reb Shimon, but first we're going to see the sheet of the Tanakama. What does the Tanakama hold? Not Reb Shimon. The Tanakama says, Echad hazvachem haru'uyin, ve'echad hazvachem she'einan ru'uyin. Either way, ru'uyin and einan ru'uyin as well. V'chein hashochet l'shem imurei tzibor. Someone who changes their kavanah, pater divrei Rabbi Meir. So Rabbi Meir is going to pater both in the case of ra'ui and eino ra'ui. Here comes our shita, the one that's reflected in our Mishnah. What does our Mishnah say? Amar Reb Shimon. Reb Shimon says, Lo nechlaku Rabbi Eliezer Rabbi Yeshua al she'einan ru'uyin shechayim. They both agree that if the animal is a cow, for the sake of a korban pesach, pasha that you're going to be chayiv there. Just open your eyes. The animal is not shaykh to a korban pesach. It's a cow. It's not allowed. Where do they in fact argue? Al haru'uyan. The only time they argue when a person takes a random animal and they shecht it for the sake of a korban pesach. Everyone agrees that the animal is not a korban pesach. The only question is, did you violate the Isser D'oraisa of Shechita on Shabbos because it really wasn't a korban pesach? There, al haru'uyan Rabbi Eliezer mechayv chatav Rabbi Yeshua poter. Says the Gemara, crazy idea. Amar Rabibi. Amar Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi says the following about Rabbi Elazar, not Eliezer, Elazar. He says, Poter haya Rabbi Meir, afilu egel shel zivchei shlamim sheshachto l'shum pesach. He would pater an animal, an egel is a very large animal, it's a calf, that's a cow. That's not a regular animal for a korban pesach. Still there, he'd say that if it was done for zivchei shlamim, and it was shachto l'shum pesach, it was an animal that was a shlamim, but your mindset was for pesach. Within the camp of Rav Meir, Rav Bibi says, you're going to be pater. Amar le Reb Zera le Reb Bibi v'ha'amar Reb Yochanan modahaya Reb Meir b'balei mumin. I don't understand. You're going to say over there that you're pater when you take a cow to do a korban pesach. But when it comes to a bal mum, everyone agrees that you're going to be chayav. The animal's missing a leg, it's missing an ear, it's missing an eye. Come on, why would you say that an egel, which is a way too big of an animal for a korban pesach, why would you say that that's pater? That should be chayav just like a bal mum. So answers the Gemara, Amar le, the last of the short lines, Ayin Beis Amud Aleph, Amar le, bebale mumin lo taribu. There was no race to check the animal. You got plenty of time to check the animal. Do it once over. But here with the Korban Pesach, it's only on Yudalit, it's only after Chatzos, you're rushing, you grab the calf, it's the wrong kind of animal, granted. So that's why the Gemara in the name of Rav Meir makes a distinction. Asks the Gemara, Bamene Rabbi Meir of Nachman. What about an animal that's totally not shaykh? Chulin, an animal that wasn't even set aside, it wasn't even mukdash to be brought as a korban pesach. Chulin, l'shum pesach, mali amar Reb Meir. What would Reb Meir say in such a case? We know what he says about the case of the egel shel zivchei shlamim. What does he say about a random animal in the barn? You tell the farmer, go get me an animal out of the barn. I don't care what it is. It's chulin. Amar le, what would he say? Second line of the wide lines halfway down. Poter hay Reb Meir fil chulin shel l'shum pesach. Even a random animal would be pater if you would have brought that as a korban if your mindset was pesach. It's unbelievable how far he takes the idea of ta'ah b'mitzvah. He says even if the animal is completely ineligible, not a balmum, but if the animal is otherwise ineligible because of its size, it doesn't make a difference. You're going to be pater. Says the Gemara. Same question. How can you say over here that the case of chulin is going to be pater if balmum is going to be chayiv? So says the Gemara, Baalei Mumin lo michlafei. We're never going to make a mistake by a Baal Mum. The animal is blaringly not eligible for a korban. However, Hani michlafei, here by the chulin animals, the fact that the animal is not mukdash is not evident when you look at it. You can't tell if an animal's mukdash or not. We don't brand it. We have no idea. So when you take a chulin animal, it really looks like a korban pesach. We don't know. Mashe'ein kain, when it comes to Baalei Mumin, they're a pasha. You're just not looking. Go do your job. Go look at the animal and see if it has a mum. So therefore, this is how Rav Meir would work out. Rav Meir would say by a Baal Mum, I agree that you're going to be chayv. That guy was irresponsible. Go look at your animal, see if it has a mum. But when it's a chulin animal that's the right size, pashut that we're going to make a mistake like that. So therefore, in that case, it's fine that he made that error, quote unquote. It's not fine, but at least it's not an isur d'oraisa. Says the Gemara, but wait a minute. You just said that it was about michlafei and lo michlafei. Says the Gemara, but taima, the Rav Meir mishum michlufei v'lo ichlufei. Is that really what it's about? That by Baalei Mumin we'll never make that error if only I would have looked, therefore I'm chayiv. But by the case of the chulin animal, I would make the mistake, and therefore that's the distinction. How can that be? 5 lines ago, why there did he say that the egel shalzav, which was a shlamim, that he had intent for the korban pesach? Why there did he say pater? Alma. Taima de Rav Meir mishum detari, because he was so busy. It was Erev Pesach. He was running around. So we fine. We're going to give you. We're going to be light on you. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says we're going to be light on you. We're not going to give you a big punishment for that. So how do we understand this conflict? Is the makor, the shita of Rav Meir, because of tarid, that you're so involved in the mitzvah that you might make an error, or is the shita of Rav Meir because of ichlufe, about whether or not we can perceive an error? Maybe you picked up a chulin animal. I can't tell the difference, so you're pater. So answers the Gemara, Amar Le, almost exactly halfway down, 7 lines down, 6 lines down in the wide lines. Amar Le, tarid. When will you be pater in the name of Meir? Tarid. If you're very tarid, it's mamish erev Pesach. You're racing. Afal gav de lo michlav, even though lo michlav, he wouldn't have made such an error. And michlav afal gav de lo tarid. And if you might have made the error, right, the chulin animal that looks like a kachim animal, we can't tell the difference. But and even though afal gav de lo tarid, even if it wouldn't have been a crazy time of day, in all of those cases you would have been pater la fuke Baalei Mumin to lo ichlufe michlav lo mitrad tarid. By the Baal Mum, there's no excuse. There's no, even the most makil shita of our Gemara, which is the shita of Rav Meir, there is no excuse. You are never going to be exempt for allowing a Baal Mum to get to the korban. Never acceptable. You need to open your eyes and you need to check. Fine. Says the Gemara halfway down. Yosef Reb Zera, Reb Shmuel bar Yitzchak, Reb Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak, Akila de Reb Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak. They were at Akila, which is, Akila is like a doorway or like a foyer area, like an entryway. They were sitting there, maybe a screened-in porch, a nice day, and they're talking and learning. Amar Reb Shimon ben Lakish. Reb Shimon ben Lakish says, I'm going to paint a picture for you. You have a skewer that's filled with meat that's nosar, and you mix it up with b'shipo shel tzli, and you mix it up with a regular roasted meat. I don't know which one's which. You ate possibly nosar, and you ate possibly regular tzli meat. What's the halacha? Chayev. Okay, next line. And whenever it says Rav Yochanan Amar instead of Amar Rav Yochanan, whenever we put the name first, we always assume a machlokes, but it's not so clear here, as the Gemara is going to indicate. Rav Yochanan Amar, in a case of Ishto Nida, Ba'al Chayev, if a man's wife is a Nida and they are intimate, Chayev. Thank you very much. That is literally a pasuk in Vayikra. So what does that mean? It doesn't mean that it was obvious to him that she was a Nida. It was not obvious that she was a Nida, but it became clear that she was Taka. She was Taka Nida. So that's what we're talking about. It wasn't clear. Now, Rav Yochanan, that's part 1 of Rav Yochanan. Here's part 2. Yevimto Nida, his brother, a man's brother died, and they had no children, and the mitzvah of Yibum. So the intimacy of the Yibum is a mitzvah. So he was going to be together with his new wife to be. So in that case, if they're together, same circumstance, Nida, Ba'al Pater. Allah is their Pater. So is Rav Yochanan arguing on the Shita of Reish Lakish or no? So it says the Gemara 2 options. There are those who will say, Kol Shekain Be'ahi. Yes, I agree with Rav Shimon, and all the more so, it would be true. Ishto Nida is obvious, and all the more so by Rav Shimon, D'mechayev de lo asa mitzvah, because there by the basar it's not a mitzvah. Ista Amre, some say no. Be'ahi Pater. In the case of Rav Shimon, it would be Pater. My taima Hasam who dahavaleli shiule. by the Isha Nida, he should have had a transparent dialogue with her to find out how close she was to her period, and maybe if there's any dam that has begun to discharge. Aval hacha with the basar, the lo have a leili shiule. There was no way to identify the basar in such a case. Lo, that would not be the case. We'd say you're pater in that case. So asks the Gemara, hold on one second, but Rav Yochanan, mashna yevimto de ka'avid mitzvah. Whoa, I don't understand. The reason why you're pater by the Yavama when you're intimate with her the first time to consecrate the marriage, so that's a mitzvah. Ishto nami kavi mitzvah. Tashmish amita with one's wife, we should still say pater. You're right. The conclusion was that she was a nida, but the fact is that it's ta b'mitzvah. You made a mistake, but tashmish amita at times is a mitzvah saseh shel Torah. Says the Gemara, the ishto meuberes. She's already pregnant. So what mitzvah must we be talking about? Pru'ervu. And if a woman's already pregnant, she can't conceive twice. She's already pregnant. So therefore, maybe there's no mitzvah. Says the Gemara, that's not correct. There's still a mitzvah for a couple to be intimate. We have a mitzvah in the Torah that in a particular frequency, based on the Gemara, and this is quoted in the Shulchan Aruch and Siman Reish Mem and Orach Chaim, that the halacha is that there is a mitzvah of ona for a couple to be together. So even if she's a meuberes, even if a woman has conceived, it doesn't mean they should never be together. So it says the Gemara, Shelo b'shas onasa, this was not the appropriate time, because we know halacha l'maisa that we have what are called vestos. So when a woman reaches a vestes, the halacha is that she's supposed to be porish from her husband for at least one ona. We're makbid for the or zarua that we add another ona afterwards, 24 hours that we're not together for 3 days, for the interval set of days, for the calendar days, and one other one, maybe two other ones, and a vestes beinonis. Anyways, it was Shelo b'shas onasa, but so what? It may not have been the case that. Oh, sorry, I said that wrong. Let me go back a little bit. Va'ika simchas ona. Okay, granted, she's pregnant. Va'ika simchas ona, but there's still a time that they can be together where there's a mitzvah, as long as she shows a teshuka to be together. Answers the Gemara, shelo b'shas onasa. They've already fulfilled the requirements of frequency. So this is a big discussion. We know famously the line that we say is onas talmidei chachamim, that it's for people who are in the category of talmidei chachamim, they should be together once a week on Fridays. On Friday nights. That's considered to be the onas talmidei chachamim. Of course, couples should try and find the appropriate balance. In the Shulchan Aruch, for the average person in the Shulchan Aruch, it speaks to the idea of twice a week as being an appropriate frequency for intimacy. Nevertheless, in this case, let's say it was twice a week, so they were together already twice that week. So this was shelo b'shas onasa. So the mitzvah of ona was already fulfilled. So to this, the Gemara says, but wait a minute. So says the Gemara here that chayav adam l'samech isha, a husband should be available to his wife for intimacy if she shows a desire to do so. So here the Gemara says samach levesta. Here the Gemara says that no, she's samach levesta, that she's close to reaching her period, and therefore it's not appropriate for them to be together. Big machlokas in the Gemara Maseches Nida. Are vestos deraisa or vestos derabanan? Is there an isser deraisa to be together with one spouse on a day that's a vestes, yes or no? We paskin that it's a midirabanan, and therefore there are times that one can be lenient as long as there are certain indicators. After a vestes, during a vestes, a woman should make sure that she's done a bedika before the couple is intimate again, just to make sure that the blood has that the uterine lining has not started to strip away, so that she'll become a nida. So it says the Gemara, ihachi, if all of that is true, we have to apply all of the same exact rules to his yavama. Afilu yavimto nami. Says the Gemara, you're right that maybe he should have been able to ask her, but yavimto bazis mina. This is like the first time they're together. So bazis, there's like a little busha there that he has with his yavama. Masha'en can be ishto la bazis mina. Okay, very good. Says the Gemara, Rav Yochanan kiman. Rav Yochanan, who does he hold like in regards to the yavama, that a yavama is pater? Says the Gemara, that a man who is intimate with a yavama for the first time to consecrate the marriage and shitaka becomes a nida. So, and that they're pater, where does that come from? Ilema, 3/4 of the way down, 15 lines up. Ilema ka Rabbi Yossi, maybe it's like the following shita. Ditnan, Rabbi Yossi Omer, Yom Tov Rishon Shechalios, B'Shabbos V'Shachach V'Hotzi Esalula V'Rishus HaRabin. Let's say there was a person who they ended up accidentally carrying out the Daled Minim into Rishus HaRabin. They're pater in the Shehotzi B'Rishus. You were carrying it for good reasons. That you were spaced out. You walked out into the public. So because you were so bahul, so maybe that's the same idea as to why you're tarud. You're tarud, you're distracted. So to buy the yavama, you're distracted. Says the Gemara, that doesn't work. Maybe that's not true, because by the Daled Minim, you can only fulfill the mitzvah of dalminim during the daylight hours. Masha Enkim with the Yavama, the intimacy can't happen at any time. In fact, it's written in halacha that one should be only belayla in a dark room in a beis afil when a couple is intimate, to preferably be in a beis afil. If it's not dark enough, we can turn off lights. And if it's not dark enough because there's moonlight, then one should use a blanket to be ma'apil b'taliso to cover up, to try and remain sanua. Fine, so that doesn't work. So let's try another source as to where we learn that a man who is intimate with a Yavama and finds out she's a Nida, that they're pater. The Ella, maybe Rabbi Yehoshua Dezvachim, maybe our Mishnah, Rabbi Yehoshua Dezvachim, who says you're pater in our Mishnah. So why don't we say that that's our source for Rabbi Yochanan's source about the Yavama? Says the Gemara, no, the Zvachim too, Korbanos can only be brought during the day. Dil Mahasam Nami is Mano Bahu. Oh, so we have to try again. Belak Rabbi Yehoshua de Tinokes. Maybe within the machlokos that we saw in regards to bris milah, we saw the sheet of Rabbi Yehoshua that he was pater there. Maybe by the bris milah where you're pater over there for doing it because it's tav b'mitzvah, you're pater b'mitzvah. Maybe we should say the same by Yevama. No, bris milah is only done during the day. Hasam nami zmano bo. I just got a request this week. Can you do the bris at 6, 7, 8, 9 o'clock? It's convenient for our family. I'm so sorry. Absolutely not. It's a zero. We got to find another time to do it during the day. So that source doesn't work either. The Ella, maybe it's Rabbi Yehoshua de Truma. Maybe it's like the sheet of Rabbi Yehoshua in the world of Truma. What does Rabbi Yehoshua say about the world of Truma? That's not 10 lines from the bottom on Ayin Beis Mid Beis. You're in the middle of eating truma and you instantly find out that you're not a good kohen anymore. You married a ben grusha ben chalutza. That's not kishmak. Then says the Gemara, there we have a machlokas. Rabbi Eliezer mechayev karen b'chomish. Rabbi Yeshua poter. Same thing. You're taba mitzvah. It's the same shita over and over and over again. Rabbi Yeshua taba mitzvah is poter. Rabbi Eliezer holds it's chayv. So maybe this is the Rabbi Yehoshua that we hold like. This is where we learn the Yavama from. We learned that it's from the case of the Patur here. It's an unfortunate scenario. Taba mitzvah is going to be pater. It's a Yavama. Taba mitzvah, you're going to be pater. Says the Gemara, well, maybe not. Dilma kirabibi barabai. Dilma rabibi barabai, but truma be'erev Pesach desman habo. Maybe we're talking about truma that's on erev Pesach. And there we have a limited amount of time, just until Shkia. And therefore we cannot learn Yavama from there. Inami, another possible reason, shiny truma dikri avoda. Also, maybe you can't learn it out from truma because truma has a unique din to it that it's called an avoda. Ve'avoda rachmana achshar. There, the avoda was given a heter by the truma from a pasuk in the Torah, so therefore you cannot learn Yavama from there because it's a unique din unto itself. How do we know all of this? It's not 6 lines from the bottom. You're about to do a korban and someone says, "Wait, your wife lied to you. She's taka ben grusha." Fine. Says the Gemara, "Kol korbanos kulan shikri b'agam mizbech psulin." Rabbi Yeshua machshir. Rabbi Yeshua here says that your machshir, these korbanos, the Kohen was a ben grusha ben chalutza. Says the Gemara, don't worry about it. Vermina my time. What's the reason to Rabbi Yeshua? Why does he say that the all of the korbanos of this Kohen were fine? Because the short answer we would have wanted to say is taba mitzvah is pater, therefore Yavama, but we can't say that. Here we're not saying taba mitzvah pater. Here what we're saying is that we have a gzera d'oraisa as to why the Kohen, who now found out that he's no longer a good Kohen, why his korbanos are good. That which his hands did is considered acceptable, even though he's a ben grusha ben chalutza. We still say it's acceptable. Utruma hecha ikri avoda. How do we know that truma is referred to as an avoda? The Tanya, the Brisa writes, one night Rabbi Tarfon didn't show up to night seder, and he got called to task on it in the morning. L'shachris matzu mitzao Rabban Gamliel. Rabban Gamliel says to him, Amar lo, Rabbi Tarfon, where were you? Why didn't you come to night seder that night? Amar lo, he said back to him, avoda avadati. I was doing the avoda. Amar lo, Rabban Gamliel is like, I think you have lost your marbles. What is going on here? Kol dvarecha einan ela divrei tema. Everything that just came out of your mouth, I have no idea what you're talking about. They're divrei tema. You did the avoda, and he says more explicitly, v'chi avoda b'zman hazeh minayin. Meicha teisi that there's any avoda today at all. There's no Beis HaMikdash. What avoda are you talking about? Amar lo, Rabbi Tarfon answers, Rehu Omer, turning to the top of Ayin Gimel Amar Aleph, and with this we're going to close out. Avodas matana etenes kunaschem v'azar karev. You must. What does that pasuk mean? Asu achilas truma. The achila of truma is treated b'gvulin outside of the mikdash ke'avodas Beis HaMikdash. It's treated to be exactly like the same as the Beis HaMikdash, and that is how eating truma got the name of avoda. We'll stop here. Is today Tuesday? Today's Monday. It's Monday. Tomorrow night a blot. I don't know how much we'll try to get done. A blot and a half, maybe more. And then no Daf Yomi at all, not in person or on Zoom on Wednesday night. And we'll pick up again Thursday night. Have a beautiful night.
But we're moving forward, right? We're not catching up.